Hi, Challenge B. This is the Latin lesson that begins on page 286 on secondary sequence. So if you look up here, if the main clause of an indirect question is in either the present, future, or future perfect, then the subordinating clause is going to be in either the present or the perfect tense. And you use the present tense if the action in the subordinating clause is happening at the same time as the action in the main clause. But if the action in the subordinating clause is happening before the action in the main clause, then you use the perfect tense. All right, so this is the primary sequence. Now the secondary sequence is this. If the main clause verb is in the imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect, then the subordinating clause is going to be in either the imperfect or the pluperfect. And it's imperfect if the action is happening at the same time in the subordinating clause as in the main clause. And you use the pluperfect if the action is happening before the action in the main clause. Okay, so let's do a couple of sentences so we can practice this. And our first sentence says, Caesar asked whether the soldiers had fought. All right. Caesar asked whether the soldiers had fought. All right, so let's just start looking at what we see right away. First of all, we have the main clause here and the subordinating clause here. And this is an indirect question. We have asked, and we also have a period. So this is an indirect question. We see that Caesar asked, that is in the perfect tense. And we just learned that the perfect tense is a secondary tense. So that means that the verb here in the subordinating clause is going to be in either the imperfect or the pluperfect. So if the action is happening at the same time as the main clause, then it would be imperfect. And if the action is happening before the action of the main clause, then the tense would be pluperfect. So which tense is this? The action is happening whether the soldiers had fought. So the action is happening before the action of the main clause. So we would use the pluperfect over here. So we'll make a note of that. And we also know that in a subordinating clause, the mood is always subjunctive. So let's write that down. Subjunctive. Let's see here. We have whether, and we can express whether in one of two ways. We could either just add ne to the end of the verb, or we could use the word num. So we'll just use num this time. Okay, and we know that soldiers, the soldiers being used in the nominative here is militis. All right, now we just need to, we have Caesar. That's easy. All right, now we just have the verbs left. So let's do this verb first. We know it's perfect. We know that it is indicative. We also know that asked is a first conjugation verb, and Caesar is third person, and it's singular. And I think we have enough information now to get our ending. We know that if a verb is in the perfect system, we use the third principal part. So our stem would be roga, wheat, or roga, and then our ending, because it's third person, singular, and perfect, it's going to be eat, roga, wheat. Okay, now this verb over here, we already know it's pluperfect, and we know it's subjunctive. Soldiers, that makes it third person and it's plural. And we know that pugno is a first conjugation verb. So let's just write down the stem. Pluperfect is in the perfect system. So our stem would be pugna. And then our ending, if we look it up in the grammar, it is essent. Essent. And that is grammar number 201. Okay, so this is actually an order that is just fine. So kasar, rogawit, no militis, pugnawiscent. And we're finished with that one. Let's do one more example. And this is going to be from the exercise that you have for this week. This is exercise 302. Exercise 302, number 1. And it says, I asked where the enemy was. I asked where the enemy was. Okay, so first of all, we see I asked. That is the main clause, and where the enemy was is the subordinating clause. So we know that subordinating clauses are in the subjunctive mood, and this main clause is in the indicative. All right, indicative. We also see I asked. That is in the perfect tense. All right, and what we learned is that the perfect tense is a secondary tense, which means that our subordinating clause, the verb, is going to be either in the imperfect or the pluperfect. So it's imperfect if the action is happening at the same time as the main verb, or it's pluperfect if the action is happening before the main verb. So I asked where the enemy was. So this action is happening at the same time as I asking. So we know that this will be in the imperfect. Okay, so let's knock out some of the easy words first. We know where, if it implies a state of rest, is ubi. And this word is what is beginning the subordinating clause. This is an interrogative adverb that we learned about last week. So that's ubi. The enemy is hostis. All right, and then so we just have the verbs left now. So I asked, it is a first person, and that is singular, and it's perfect indicative. So any verb that is perfect is built on the third principal part. So let's write down the stem, roga, and then the ending for first person singular, indicative perfect, is just e, rogawi. All right, and then we have our verb over here, was, which is one of the to be verbs. It's an irregular verb, so it actually has its own grammar page. So the enemy tells us this is third person, and it is plural. What else? I think that's all we need to know, really. This is also in the active voice. All right, so if we look up active, it is subjunctive, it is imperfect, third person plural, and we can see that the verb is assent. And that is grammar number 353. All right, and this is actually in an order that can stay this way. So rogawi, ubi, hostis, assent. All right, have fun with the exercises.